Why is faith necessary? Faith is necessary because God is foremost concerned that the condition of our heart be one of firm trust in Him. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. If you've ever been hiking through rugged or mountainous terrain, you'll inevitably come to a point in the path where it approaches dangerously close to the edge of a steep cliff. There's a story of a man who was walking upon such a path. He came to a great precipice and he gazed out across the horizon, taking in the amazing contours and colors of the landscape. It seemed to be calling to him, enchanting him with its beauty. That's when it happened. He was drawn too near. His foot slipped, he lost control, and he fell. The next thing he knew, he was desperately holding on to a tree that had rooted itself into the steep face of the cliff. He hung there with a certain strength that was unsustainable for any long period of time. Above him was nothing but 20 feet of sheer cliff face, nearly impossible to climb. And far below him was nothing but jagged rocks and certain death. In desperation, he cried out for someone to help him. And that's when he heard distinctly a voice from heaven saying, "Do you believe that I can help you?" "Yes," the man shouted. "Please help me." To which the voice asked a second question, "Do you believe that I have the power to help you?" The man had no one else to turn to. He responded, "Yes, I do." The heavenly voice then asked once more, "Do you believe that I love you enough to help you?" Well, the man had no one else to turn to, so naturally he said, "Yeah, sure, whatever, just get me out of here." And that's when the voice said, "Okay, go ahead, let go." The man seemed to pause, to ponder this bizarre command. He didn't have to think about it for long before he confidently answered back, "Never mind. Is there anyone else up there who can help?" Faith can be a funny thing. Believing in what is unseen can be a difficult proposition. Beyond being difficult, it can be truly terrifying to put your trust in someone or something that you cannot prove. In this age of postmodern relativism, where truth is considered subjective based on one's personal perception of it, faith in God and in His Word stand as an absolute against this, and the swirling torrent of various thoughts, arguments, and pretensions that set themselves up against the knowledge of God, and that would otherwise lead to utter confusion. Faith is necessary because it is the only thing that can grab hold of truth and claim unequivocally that God is true and that His Word is sure. Faith is the calm in the center of the storm. It is the trust that is the only thing that can weather the storm of confusion, doubt, and fear. And it is something that we must necessarily persevere in. In John chapter 18, verse 37, Jesus is speaking to Pontius Pilate when he says, "Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." To which Pilate responds, "What is truth?" Most conclude from the statement that Pilate was a bit of a relativist, that he wasn't willing to believe that the prisoner who stood before him knew anything more or less than anyone else. People make truth claims all the time about all sorts of things, which can often make it very difficult to know who is right or to know what is true. For example, for decades we were all lectured by dietary experts who warned us about the dangers of eating fat. As a result, low-fat diets reigned. Up until new experts came along and told us that fat isn't the problem at all, that fat is really very healthy and good, that carbohydrates are the culprit which cause heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. So, who is right? What is truth? We often look to science to answer these questions for us. We set up a test, control every possible variable, and observe the results. Do you remember when we were told that science was supposed to replace God? that faith was an antiquated relic of our ancestors' darkened and ignorant intellect, that they believed silly made-up stories in a futile effort to understand a world that seemed strange and cruel. Science was supposed to answer all of our questions in a logical and rational way, and perhaps in a way that was more believable. But you see, whether we want to admit it or not, we all operate by faith. Evolutionists believe in a Darwinian theory for the origin of life. Physicists believe in the theory of the Big Bang for the origin of the universe. Neither are observable, neither can be tested in a scientific sense. So why are so many people certain about these sort of things? The answer is because of faith. They are choosing to believe something without seeing it. They are choosing to trust it. It is necessary for them because they have no alternative for understanding events and circumstances which they cannot otherwise prove. And they suppress the truth of God in unrighteousness. Faith is a choice. Jesus presented Pontius Pilate with a choice to either believe that Jesus was a king whose kingdom was not of this world, a king whose whole purpose in being born was to point people to the truth, but instead Pilate chose to flippantly dismiss the validity of any truth claim, to sharply turn on his heels, and to ultimately condemn Jesus to death because it was more convenient for him. Faith is necessary because God asks us to choose him, and faith is always a choice. Pilate made a choice, and in doing so he revealed what he believed, what he had faith in. Pilate's actions revealed his heart, and it is with the heart that man believes and is justified. Romans chapter 10 verse 10 says that it is with the heart one believes. You can rack your brain day and night trying to answer big questions like, why do I exist? What is the purpose for my life? What will happen to me when I die? Or, am I really loved? Will I survive this storm? Is life really worth living when there's so much pain and grief? Math, logic, and science will never be able to answer these questions. And this is where faith becomes necessary. This is where trusting in God becomes absolutely and essentially necessary. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1 says that faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. All men and women hope that there is meaning to life, yet many do not see it. All men and women hope that there is a blissful and perfect existence beyond this life that we'll be able to share with loved ones. Yet most are doubtful or uncertain about this because it's something they haven't experienced. All men and women should hope for an omnipotent and benevolent God who is perfect in holiness and who loves us more deeply than logic or reason could ever explain. Yet most, sadly, choose not to believe in a God whom they cannot see or test. Yet, the absolute assurance of these things, the sure conviction of their existence, veracity, and reality, is exactly what faith is. It is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. A trust that the deepest longings and desires of our being have been designed to be fully and only satisfied by God. The book of Hebrews goes on to say that without faith it is impossible to please God. Why? Because he who would come to God must first believe that he exists and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. The only way to truly and sincerely acknowledge that God is who he says he is, that he is a self-giving God who invites us to share in him fully, is to choose to believe it in your heart, to trust it, to have faith. There is no other way to know it. It does not say that without faith it is difficult to please God. No, it says that without faith it is impossible to please him. There is no substitute for faith. There is no other way to be certain. If we have this faith, then the inevitable conclusion is that we will diligently seek such a God. And we are promised that when we diligently seek him, he will be found. Faith is necessary because it is the necessary means in which we make the choice to recognize, acknowledge, and trust God. As the proverb says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rest on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Some people say, why do I need to have faith? Why won't God just make himself obvious? Why won't he just reveal himself? Why does he seem to hide while asking us to blindly follow him? Well, I tell you most certainly that God has not hidden himself at all. He has communicated himself to us plainly and openly. He has communicated himself to us in the most relatable and clear way we could ever hope for. He has communicated himself to us as one of us, a human being. And it is in this human being, this person, Jesus Christ, Yeshua the Messiah, that we are asked specifically to place our faith in. Faith is necessary for knowing God, and knowing God is eternal life.